this is one of those rare days, Trish, when the Facebook executives come prepped to talk about the stock. And let's face it, the stock has been one of the biggest parts of the Facebook story over the last 12 months. There were a lot of average investors who bought shares right around the IPO price, thinking there was an exciting ride ahead. They didn't know the ride was going to be lower. And that's the kind of shareholder commentary you've been hearing today. You know, the guy who says, hey, I bought shares for my son's future, thinking this was going to be a great story. Mark Zuckerberg knew he was going to get stock questions. Before he even took questions from shareholders, he said, I'm disappointed, just like you are in the stock performance. He said disappointed on multiple occasions, said, we can't control the stock price. All we can control is what we're doing with our business. And finding new users for our service, which he says, you know, we're averaging about 100 million new users a year, although in the last 12 months it's been 200 million. Find a way to make the mobile experience better because more people are using us on mobile. And then find a way to make more advertising dollars because that's what's driving their business overall. Sharing a little bit of light on where the company is going long term and how he feels good about that fundamentally without getting into too many specifics. But I think all you can say is you're disappointed when the stock is still nowhere near where you went public.
Yeah, sure. No, you can say that again. Let me go over to Brian for a moment. You know, mobile is clearly critical to this company. In your opinion, is Facebook doing enough to capture the ad revenue, Brian, that they should be getting on the mobile front?
Well, remember, most of what they're capturing from mobile revenue is merely an allocation. In other words, it's money that they were collecting, and then they basically have said, let's run this on a mobile device. But where I think the bigger growth opportunities are coming from, and where Facebook, I think, is doing a really good job executing, but a terrible job explaining, is how they're capturing market share from small businesses with promoted posts, how they're growing FBX, which is capturing money from more direct response advertisers. There's a lot of legs to the stool. They're just not really talking about it as much as they should.
Well, you also look at revenue growth, and that's clearly slowing. It was up 88% in 2011 versus just 37% last year. Clara, what does this company need to do to bring some growth back to it?
Well, I think, again, it's hard to say from a stock perspective how you grow, but the company is doing three really incredible things that I think will pay off in the near and long term. If you look at what they're doing in mobile, we talked about that, in search and in commerce, I think both represent long-term plays that are going to create a lot of economic value.
So the one thing I keep coming back to whenever I talk Facebook is something that was brought up by Bloomberg View columnist Paul Kudrowski. He said converting like into want and ultimately need, which means you're buying and somehow Facebook figures out how to get paid for that. How do they do that, Claire?
Well, that's right. I think that, Facebook just has so much data that they are collecting on every single user. And also, if you look at the interplay between how one Facebook member affects the behavior and the likes of another, there's a lot of clustering that happens. And so if they can tap into that, which I think they're just scratching the surface on, they can really start to influence buying patterns and really generate that demand and that need.
John Ehrlichman, are we hearing much about that, converting like into, how did you phrase it, want
and then need?
Brian Wieser got to this earlier. The fact that they introduced this one ad platform, the short form is FBX, it's Facebook Exchange. Basically, they teamed up with some outside advertising technology players who then basically help Facebook to track where you're going when you're away from Facebook. So when you come back to Facebook, if you're at your computer or you have your phone and you're looking, say, at your news feed, there's going to be an ad that is better targeted for you. That increases the likelihood that you'll ultimately click on that ad and generate a sale, which makes Facebook happy and the advertisers happy. So I think that's as big a part of the story as anything, because at the end of the day, when the earnings reports come out, we're going to be looking at how much advertising revenue the company is generating. And to your point earlier, what's the growth rate? Are they growing that advertising at a significant rate versus the previous year? And you do that by introducing better ad products, not just better features, but better ways of getting the right ad in front of people. We'll all click on an ad if we think it's relevant to us. If it's for teeth whitening, maybe we pass.
Yeah, obviously, the question, when can Facebook start flying high in the way that those jets are flying high over your head, John Ehrlichman, near the airport in San Francisco? Brian Wieser, how long are we going to have to wait for Facebook to actually figure this all out and start connecting the dots and actually showing double-digit growth on earnings?
Yeah, market sentiment is a really difficult thing to anticipate. The reality is that they're going to see some margin expansion over the coming year. I think it's unrealistic to expect anything resembling 88% growth for a company of this size already. They're massive, to be clear. I think on an ongoing basis, they can get a top-line growth rate of 30% next year, margins that grow much faster than that because they're investing heavily this year. And on an ongoing basis, this is a bedrock to most advertisers' media plans. So it's stable growth, too.
Let me ask Clara, the NSA scandal has obviously really been developing over the last week and a half or so with new things coming out daily. How does this affect a company like Facebook? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg spoke about it, said, clearly it doesn't help. I mean, you're in that social media space. What does it mean for Facebook and other companies?
I think it's a fine balance, and ultimately, aside from the NSA issue, we're seeing that users are willing to trade off some privacy to get better personalization. Now, obviously, this is a different instance, and I think Mark already made his comments today at the shareholder meeting regarding their stance. But I think when you're at the forefront of digital technology and you are the place where over 1 billion people spend so much of their time, you're going to have a lot of data, and the key is to be transparent about how you use that data with all of your users.